Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today we're diving into a really cool native wildflower. It's called Dodecatheon media, but most folks just call it the Midland shooting star or sometimes the Eastern shooting star.
Yeah, those common names really fit the look of this plant. It's really unique. It's got these delicate flowers that dangle downwards.
Yeah,
They look just like tiny shooting stars, hence the name.
it's a beautiful plant.
Yeah, and it has some other fun common names too. You might hear it called shooting star, pride of Ohio, rooster heads, or even prairie pointers.
Really captures the imagination, doesn't it? But let's get into the details. What does this shooting star actually look like? Besides shooting stars, obviously.
Right, well, it all starts with a rosette of leaves at the base of the plant.
A rosette?
Yeah, it means the leaves are all clustered together in a circular pattern, kind of like the petals of a rose.
Ah, I see.
These leaves can be grayish green or just plain green, and they have a pretty distinctive shape. They're kind of oblong or like a really long oval, and they can get up to 6 inches long and 2.5 inches wide.
That's a decent size.
Yeah, and they have a prominent central vein running down the middle, with smaller veins branching out from it, almost like a feather.
I could picture that.
Oh, and one thing that's interesting about this plant, all the parts are completely smooth, no hairs at all.
So not fuzzy or prickly at all.
Nope, totally smooth.
Interesting. So we have this rosette of leaves. What happens next?
Well, from that rosette, a flowering stalk emerges. This stalk can grow to be anywhere from 1 to 1.5 feet tall, and it can be either green or sometimes it has a reddish tint to it.
I've seen pictures of both.
Yeah, and at the very top of that stalk, you'll find an umbel of flowers. An umbel is basically a cluster of flowers that all originate from the same point, kind of like the spokes on an umbrella.
Right, so it's like an upside-down umbrella of flowers.
Exactly. And this plant can have anywhere from 6 to 40 flowers on a single stalk.
That's a lot of flowers.
It is. It creates quite a show when they're all in bloom. And each individual flower is really interesting. It has 5 petals that are reflexed, which means they're bent backwards.
So they're kind of pointing upwards.
Well, more like backwards, away from the center of the flower. And they all converge at this point to form a yellowish cone-shaped structure in the middle of the flower.
And I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a very distinctive look.
Yeah, and that cone is actually made up of the stamens, which produce pollen, and the pistil, which is the female part of the flower. It has these subtle accents of white and brown, which add to its beauty.
And those reflex petals, they're what really give it that shooting star look, right?
Exactly. The way they curve backwards, along with that downward pointing cone in the center, makes the whole flower resemble a tiny shooting star streaking across the sky.
It's really a perfect name for it. And speaking of timing, when do these shooting stars actually appear?
The Midland shooting star typically blooms in late spring, and the flowers last for about a month.
So a good long time to enjoy the show.
Yep. Now, something interesting about this plant is that it's what we call ephemeral.
Ephemeral. I've heard that term before, but I'm not quite sure what it means in the plant world.
In the plant world, ephemeral means that a plant has a very short lifespan above ground. So, the Midland shooting star basically disappears after it's done blooming.
It just vanishes.
Pretty much. You might see the dried flower stalks sticking around for a bit, but the leaves and everything else die back, and the plant goes dormant until the next spring.
That's fascinating. So if it disappears for most of the year, how does it come back and spread to new areas?
It relies on its seeds to reproduce and spread. After the flowers are pollinated, they develop into upright seed capsules that are small, dark, and somewhat cylindrical in shape, kind of tapering at both ends. These capsules contain the seeds, and they rely on wind to disperse them. As the wind blows and shakes the dried flower stalks, the seeds are scattered.
Makes sense. So it's a bit like a dandelion blowing in the wind.
Sort of, except the seeds are much smaller. And in addition to seeds, it also spreads slowly over time by developing offsets. These are basically little offshoots that grow from the base of the plant. They eventually become independent plants, allowing the shooting star to gradually expand its territory.
So it uses both seeds and these little offshoots to colonize new areas.
Yeah.
Now, where would you typically find the Midland shooting star in the wild?
It's native to a pretty large area of eastern North America. You can find it from western Pennsylvania all the way down to Georgia, and then westward to eastern Texas and southeastern Kansas.
It's a pretty wide range.
It is, and within that range, it's found in a variety of habitats. It likes moist, open woodlands, rocky slopes, and both dry and wet prairies. In Illinois, for example, it's found in the majority of counties.
So it's not super picky about its surroundings.
Not exactly, but it does have some preferences. It really thrives in moist to slightly dry black soil prairies, especially those on sunny hillsides. It also likes open areas in rocky upland forests, and it can be found in limestone glades, bluffs along major rivers, and even fens.
So it likes a bit of variety in its landscape.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting is that it can sometimes pop up in abandoned fields, but only if those fields are surrounded by high-quality natural habitats. So it's not really a plant that thrives in highly disturbed areas.
I was reading that wildfires can actually be beneficial for this plant. That seems counterintuitive. How can fire help a delicate wildflower?
It does seem strange, but occasional late summer or fall wildfires can actually be really important for maintaining healthy populations of this plant. Yeah. See, these fires help to clear away the buildup of dead plant material that accumulates over time. If that dead stuff isn't removed, it can actually smother the shooting star when it's trying to emerge in the spring. The fire basically creates open space and reduces competition from other plants, giving the shooting star a better chance to thrive.
So it's like a natural reset button for the ecosystem.
Exactly. Now, for all the gardeners out there, let's talk about how to grow the Midland shooting star in your own garden.
All right, let's get into some tips for growing this beauty.
Well, first of all, it does best in full sun or partial shade, so make sure it gets at least a few hours of direct sunlight each day, but it can also tolerate some shade, especially during the hottest part of the day.
Got it. What about soil?
It prefers moist to slightly dry soil, ideally with good drainage. It does well in loam soil that's rich in organic matter. Adding some rocky material to the soil can also be helpful.
So it likes soil that's not too wet, not too dry, just right.
Exactly. And one more tip for planting if you can. Plant it on a slight slope. This helps with drainage and can reduce competition from other plants.
Makes sense. So we've got the sunlight and the soil figured out. Now, how big does this plant get?
It typically reaches a height of about 1 foot when it's in bloom.
So not a giant, but tall enough to make a statement.
And it comes in those beautiful shades of white and lavender to pink, which can add a lovely touch of color to a spring garden.
Those colors would definitely go well with a lot of other spring bloomers.
And in terms of bloom time, you can expect to see those shooting star flowers sometime between April and June, depending on your location and the weather that year.
Now, I read that starting this plant from seed can be a bit challenging. What makes it so tricky?
Yeah, starting from seed can be a little more difficult than with some other plants. It's prone to something called damping off, which is a fungal disease that affects seedlings. And it's also a relatively slow grower.
So patience is key.
Definitely. What about transplanting? Is that a better option?
Yeah, is it easier to transplant an established plant?
Transplanting can be successful, but you have to be careful. The best time to transplant is when the plant is dormant, usually in the fall. If you try to move it when it's actively growing, it might not take well.
So fall is the best time to move it.
Right, and be careful not to damage the roots when you're transplanting.
Good advice. Now, besides its beauty, does the Midland shooting star have any special role in the ecosystem?
Oh, absolutely. It's a very important plant for pollinators, especially bumblebees.
Bumblebees love it.
They do. The flower structure is actually specifically adapted to bumblebee pollination. The stamens and pistil are fused together to form a narrow tube, and bumblebees have this amazing ability called buzz pollination.
Buzz pollination, what's that?
It's pretty cool. Bumblebees can vibrate their flight muscles at a very specific frequency, and this vibration dislodges the pollen from that narrow tube. It's a really specialized relationship.
So the bumblebee gets pollen and the plant gets pollinated. It's a win-win situation.
Exactly. And while bumblebees are the primary pollinators, other bees will also visit the flowers to collect pollen. These include anthophorian bees, longhorned bees in the Melissodes genus, and some of those shiny green metallic bees like Ogochlorella and Ogochloropsis.
Quite a variety of bees visit it then.
It's a popular spot for pollen-gathering bees. One interesting thing is that the flowers don't actually produce any nectar, so those bees are strictly there for the pollen.
So it's a pollen-only buffet. What about other wildlife? Do any animals eat the plant?
There's some evidence that mammalian herbivores might nibble on the foliage in the spring, but we don't have a lot of information about which animals or how much they eat. It seems like its main ecological role is really as a food source for those early emerging bees.
Providing a crucial food source for pollinators. That's fantastic. Now, before we wrap up, are there any other interesting facts or stories about the Midland shooting star?
There are a couple fun things. Did you know that early settlers on the prairies used to call it prairie pointers?
Prairie pointers, that's a great name.
It is. It's thought that They called it that because the flowers point downwards, or maybe because it bloomed at a specific time of year that was significant to them.
It really adds a sense of history and connection to the land, doesn't it?
It does. Another interesting thing is that the Midland shooting star is a great example of convergent evolution.
Convergent evolution. Remind me what that is again.
It's when unrelated organisms evolve similar traits because they live in similar environments or face similar challenges.
Ah, right. So how does the shooting star demonstrate that?
Well, the shape of its flowers and the fact that it relies on buzz pollination are actually quite similar to some flowers in the nightshade family, like horse nettle, but those plants are not closely related at all.
So they evolved similar strategies because they both rely on bumblebees for pollination.
Exactly. It's a fascinating example of how evolution works.
It really is. And I have to say, a whole colony of these in bloom must be a breathtaking sight in a spring prairie.
Oh, absolutely. It's a reminder of the incredible beauty and diversity of our native ecosystems.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive into the world of the Midland shooting star. It's not just a pretty face, it's an ecologically important plant with a fascinating life cycle and a unique relationship with pollinators.
And it's a plant that can be enjoyed in gardens, too. If you're looking for a beautiful and beneficial native plant to add to your landscape, the Midland shooting star is definitely worth considering.
It sounds like a great choice for a native plant garden. And as we learn more about native plants, we gain a deeper appreciation for the natural world and make better choices for our gardens and the environment.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll see you next time.